All right, I'm going to call to order the regular monthly school board meeting of the Board of Directors of the Fairfield Community School District. It is to be held at 6:30 p.m. on the third Monday of each month. The meeting is open to the public and the public is encouraged to attend, and time is provided for the meeting for public input. The mission of the Fairfield Community School Board of Directors is One Fairfield, where relationships foster growth, protect learners, unlock individual potential, and serve students every day. All right, can I get a call to order?
A roll call.
Roll call, please.
Margo von Strohuber. Here. John McCurley.
Here.
Kelly Scott.
Present.
Frank Rose.
Here.
Christy Walsh.
Here.
Tim Bauer.
Here.
Debbie Plum. Here.
All right. Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Do we have any old business?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right, so we're going to start off with public participation. On behalf of the fellow board members, at this time, I would like to invite any member of the audience that has filled out a form to step up to the microphone with comments about items of interest or concern. Please begin by stating your name, your relationship to the school, the items of interest or concern, and please, It would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we ask you to remember that I will not prohibit us from discussing specific employees or their job performance. We will be timing everybody tonight if you would like to speak, and we ask that you adhere to the time when the timer goes off. Okay? So first on the list is Joseph Perna.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Nice to see you here. This is a mask. And I'm going to take it off. And I'm going to smile. So would anyone in the board who's wearing a mask like to take your mask off and let us see you smile? Anybody? No? Okay. Thank you. Elections are coming up in the school board. And next year there'll be a funding for the bond proposal again. I'd like to note that anyone who didn't take off the mask, ask them, do you expect us to vote for you for the school board if you're not going to take a mask off? Do you expect us to vote to a yes vote if you didn't take the mask off and approve a bond issue for mask recommendation, optional, and vaccine recommendation? Do you expect that? Question. I know I won't vote for that. I won't vote for anyone who stands for that. I won't. I want to read a little scripture. This is from Matthew 18:7. Who shall offend one of those little ones which believe in me? It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Those are the words of the Savior. I have a faith matter for you. To require a mask on a child, to recommend that they get a jab, to me, that's equivalent to what Jesus is talking about here. Okay, here's a mask. It says on it, CCP. Everyone understands, I hope, that the reason we're being compelled or to get a jab and to wear a mask is because of a bioweapon which was released by the Chinese Communist Party. It didn't occur in nature. This was something that was manufactured and funded by a criminal by the name of Fauci. Crime is not something I want to elect in my government. It's not something I want to pay for as a taxpayer and a citizen of and a resident of Fairfield, Iowa. That's why I'm asking you all, please, throw out the masks and throw out the jab. It needs to be banned, and so do the masks. I'm pleading with you for the sake of the children, first of all. I'm an adult, and as an adult, I have to wear this mask because my employer. I'm prostituting myself for the time being, going against my principles. But I won't for long, because I'm fed up with it, and we are fed up with it. And we will not abide it. We will not put up with it. So please, do the right thing. Take the masks off. Throw out the poison that is being thrown into our bodies by an illegitimate government that stole an election. Take the money, the $34 million, and fund a forensic audit in Iowa, and it will show, I have the proof, the election was stolen. Thank you for your time. God be with you, and God bless you.
Next, we have Ed Hipp.
This has to be a little higher. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, everyone else who's put this meeting on. Appreciate that we have an opportunity to speak with you. I was at a meeting that the City Council called several weeks ago. It was a forum for what we would do about mask policy in the rec center. We had like 15-1 spoke against masks. And yet the council didn't look like they were really interested. I just was studying their faces. And then later I heard when they voted to keep the masks from an insider that no, they actually had already made up their mind. The forum was just a show to make us think that we could express ourselves and make a difference. That they had already made up their mind because Dr. Cochran, their advisor, had recommended they keep masks, and they didn't want to offend him. So I think that's a case of misplaced attention. These folks, this lady, are the people that we should be worried about offending, not some unelected, appointed person sitting in the background. I've spent all my life coaching golf, and most of that time coaching kids in grade school, high school. It's been my thrill to be outdoors, breathing fresh air with kids who don't have masks on, who I can see when they're smiling out of a good golf shot, and when they're starting to get upset because golf is just too much. I hate to see that lost. It makes me sad to think about that being lost to educators. And as I look around here, I see our student representative we're able to see what her expressions are. I appreciate your being here with your not a mask on. I believe you came in without your mask on, but now you have it on for the meeting. I thank you for being honest about where you stand with masks. I saw you pull yours down for a moment. I wonder if you were just trying to catch your breath. Do our kids get to catch their breath from wearing the masks, or is somebody going to discipline them if they pull their mask down? I'm kind of in the boat that Joe was in, only for the last election. I took a look at the referendum and I got, okay, there's the normal issues, taxation, which is my relationship to the school district. I'm a taxpayer. And I started thinking, you guys are wanting a new building, but what are you going to do in the new building? I don't want to give you a new building, and what you're going to do is use these mask mandates. I'll use a strong term, but I don't think it's really too strong to suffocate the kids. I know there's science that says masks don't impede breathing, and there's science that says they do. We can argue whose science is more legitimate, or we can just say, look, your science says this and our science says that. But let's just use our intuition. When you see the mask go in and out, somebody breathing or talking, you know it's a resistance to the air that's going in and out. We know carbon dioxide is building up in there and we're having to rebreathe it. Not the least of which, if the mask is doing its job, then it's catching COVID viruses in it and keeping them from going in. Well, what happens? Do they magically disappear? No, they're hanging out on that cloth for the rest of the day for the kid to have to keep breathing. I don't want to fund a new school for that to happen. Please let our kids breathe and show their faces freely. Thank you.
Next, we have Deborah Sidoris.
My name is Deborah Sidoris. I live here in Fairfield, and I have a daughter that goes to the high school. I'm actually here for a couple of reasons. One is to address syllabuses that are not listed on the website. If I wouldn't have seen it on my daughter's assignment, I would have known nothing about it. It was the COVID myths that was taught in the 11th grade science class. My understanding, according to the teacher, is the information came from the CDC, and she also did how to tell the truth between fake news. I asked the teacher if she chose to teach this or if the school purchased it to teach it to the children. I was not given an answer. She only replied that the school, that the children were not getting graded on it, then why teach it? Also, this assignment wasn't listed on the school syllabus, so the teachers didn't know, or I'm sorry, the parents didn't know. I have gone through the slides and I have noticed several errors. What I mean by errors are they don't match up to the truth from world-renowned doctors, biologists, and scientists. Some of the doctors are Dr. Naomi Wolf, Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Wolfgang Wolfberg, and Dr. Artis, and many more that I could list. If any of you have checked the CDC website more than one time and compared the numbers, you'll see they change them constantly, meaning they change their minds more than farmers plow their fields. Again, inconsistency. She also had part of the assignment to tell real news from fake news. I can't give examples on this as there was no access for the parents to see. Again, without going into a long discussion and providing resources, I'm just going to state it appears she doesn't bother looking at other resources and finding more truth or using resources other than fake news or Google. My point to all this is nothing is given to parents that was being taught. She didn't show other evidence from frontline doctors, scientists, or biologists that have evidence showing different opinions, letting the students make up their own mind. What's next? Critical race theory? That will turn our kids against each other, American values, the constitutional rights, and freedom. In closing, I'd like to see assignments, including any worksheets, to be put on the Canvas or parent portal for viewing, even if they're not graded. I'd also like to see all evidence to be presented to students, not just CDC, FDA, or fake news, so students can rightly make their own decisions and not be misled by a teacher's opinion. And to get to the answer, who chose this assignment, I would like someone to get back with me. Also, in regards to mask mandates, it's not your decision. It's our job. It's our rights, not yours. We voted for you guys. It's our decision and we've had enough. You don't get to make the decisions for our children. And as the speaker said before, there's evidence showing 99%, 99.8% recovery when students get this. It also has shown that kids are more depressed, have more anxiety, and the suicide rates are up. So I'm asking the board to please consider our children, what's best for them, not for you.
David Sands.
Thank you. I welcome this opportunity to speak. I'm Dr. David Sands. I'm a retired pediatrician and a taxpayer here in Fairfield. I have a different point of view. It's the point of view of those on the front line who are taking care of the many, many thousands of people who have COVID. I have a daughter who actually worked in the COVID ICU for a period of time, managing patients on ventilators. It's a very different sort of scene than you get the sense of from the general public and from those who tend to say this is really just an ordinary virus and it's nothing to worry about. I have seen the spread, even in my own family, a child bringing home the disease and spreading it to their parents. And though the economic argument has not yet been made this evening, I'm sure it will come up. When parents have to stay home because kids are brought home with highly contagious disease, there's an economic impact. And that impact across the country is huge. About masks, I also have a degree in physiology. I've actually done research that involved the use of masks and what they contribute to what is known as dead space, which is the part of the air that's in the respiratory system and inside the mask. That does not contribute to oxygenation, removal of carbon dioxide. I'd like to assure you that the masks that we're wearing, even the N95 that I wore and I'm wearing today, is not going to reduce the oxygenation for kids, except perhaps for those who have significant asthma at the time, and some exceptions might be made for those, but otherwise, wearing a mask is mainly a problem for the parents. And the kids pick up their cues from the parents. The acceptance of masks or any other kind of device is entirely, or largely anyway, a reflection of parental and social attitudes in the community. And so when people understand the value of wearing a mask in reducing the transmission of this virus and other viruses and germs, the general acceptance among students is very good, even among preschool students. Who's keeping the time?
Recording in progress.
When the school board has to take up this issue of masking and social distancing, possibly some kind of hybrid situation, clearly the well-being of the students is the foremost consideration, but also the well-being of the whole community and the effect that the spread of the virus and the students can have on that community, on this community. It's a very real thing. Yes, most students will do just fine, and the incidence of severe problems in most students is relatively low, but it does happen. And when it happens, it's a tragedy. I'm not aware of any child in our community. It's possible there is one or more who have actually had a serious problem and required hospitalization. Disease among adults has been increasing recently. We're just beginning perhaps to level off. And the complications have been severe. There are places in the United States now where there are not ICU beds to take care of people with this COVID disease. And so people are going without the proper care that they need to possibly survive. I think we need to be broad-minded and we consider the implications of any of our policies. It should be noted that this will hopefully be a temporary situation and that eventually this virus will be a trivial problem or perhaps even disappear. Unfortunately, it is a tricky virus. The vaccines that we're using are only partially effective, and that's well known. And it's unfortunate. It's not because the pharmaceutical companies haven't tried to make better vaccines. It's simply a reflection of the nature of this particular virus. It's difficult to control, to contain. So I urge the board always to take all of the factors into consideration and think of the health, not just of the students, but of the entire community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Natan Bar Shimon.
Hi, my name is Natan. My son is going to Mrs. Jones School. So this is our first year in the public school system. So I appreciate all the work you're doing. Yesterday, somebody sent me a text with the agenda for the meeting. And I looked at it. Is this meeting about mask mandates? Is there going to be a mask mandate discussion in this meeting?
The Return to Learn document is on the agenda. The Return to Learn document includes a lot of things, including the policy on masks.
Okay, gotcha. I was just not aware. I was trying to read through the agenda. I didn't realize it was a mask. I mean, everybody here seemed to have found out about it. It wasn't obvious that this meeting would be about mask mandate. So I want to mention that. What I did want to mention is about the mask mandate is recommended by the CDC. And I went on Google. And I found out from Google that this country health is basically run by recommendations from the CDC. This country spends an average of $10,000 per person on health. All the next modern country spend $5,000 or less. Okay, so this country spends double than any other countries, modern countries, on health. And remember, we follow recommendations from the CDC. Also, the US has the highest rate of chronic disease burden, 2 times higher than any other modern country. They call them first world country. Also, we follow recommendations from the CDC. Compared to peer nations, like European nations, etc., the US has among the highest number of hospitalization from preventable causes and highest rate of avoidable death. Again, we as a country tend to follow the CDC recommendation. So I understand the mask mandates are recommended by the CDC. They're not required in Iowa, so you get to make the choice. I assume you make the choice based on what the experts say. I just want to bring you to attention what the experts say led this country to be the worst in terms of chronic diseases. The amount of money we spend on healthcare double any other industrialized modern country. And that I just found that in this book, Health Skill for Middle School, diabetes. The book's from over there. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. Estimated 30 million Americans have diabetes. I looked on that app for the Trojan app to see what my son gets for breakfast. It was chocolates, donuts, chocolate, milk, very sugary ingredients, and also the lunch as well. And I was wondering, with the diabetes epidemic in the country, we're feeding the kids sugar for breakfast. How do we expect their brain to function? And I understand the food is dictated by the state, so not much say here. But I just wanted to bring that up again. Those are recommendations that come from the state and maybe come from the CDC from up above. So, I guess that hand clapping is on the back. So thank you very much.
Jessica Malloy.
Hello, and thank you. I'm not as tall as I am. Thank you. I've lived in Fairfield for 33 years. I have 3 children who've already graduated from the FHS, and my 4th child has been enrolled in K through present day here as well. I'm addressing the school board today on 2 topics, and I was told I have 5 minutes for each. So the first topic is urging the district to please continue with optional face masks instead of requiring them in our schools. I'm quoting from an article in Eco-Textile News. Top German scientists have found that wearing certain types of face masks for long periods of time could result in potentially hazardous chemicals and harmful microplastics being inhaled deep into human lungs. Professor Michael Braunert, director at the Hamburg Environmental Institute and co-founder of the world-renowned Cradle to Cradle Environmental Standard, has told Eco-Textile News that mask wearers unwittingly run the risk of breathing in carcinogens, allergens, and tiny synthetic microfibers by wearing both textile and non-woven surgical masks for long periods of time. His recent findings have been backed up by another leading industry textile chemist, Dr. Dieter Sedlak, managing director and co-founder of Modern Testing Services, Augsburg, Germany, in partnership with Modern Testing Services Global in Hong Kong, who found elevated concentrations of hazardous fluorocarbons, formaldehyde, and potentially other carcinogenic substances on surgical face masks. And this chemist said, quote, "I can only say 100% that I have similar concerns to Professor Braunert," close quote. Analytical tests by both of these experts have now thrown into doubt the wisdom of whether people should be wearing certain types of masks for hours on end, particularly school children, factory workers, and long-haul flyers who may be at a greater risk from the long-term damage to lungs through exposure to both restricted chemistry and microplastics, perhaps outweighing the short-term risk of any exposure to the coronavirus. Quote, "What we are breathing through our mouth and nose is actually hazardous waste," close quote, said Professor Braunert, who ran preliminary tests on used surgical masks that found traces of chemicals such as the known carcinogen aniline, as well as formaldehyde and optical brighteners, both heavily restricted on consumer goods by European and U.S. authorities to minute parts per million concentrations. Separate studies by Dr. Sedlak have also shown the presence of carcinogenic compounds used as cross-linkers for perfluorocarbons, PFCs, on face masks. Used in the textile sector as oil and water repellents on fabrics, byproducts of PFCs are known to be biopersistent, and their use is heavily restricted by authorities in Europe and the USA. Last year, a group of US scientists said all per- and polyfluorinated substances, PFASs, should be avoided for non-essential uses due to their hazardous toxicological and ecotoxicological, sorry, I'm a little flustered here. Those are big words, hard to pronounce, profile. Honestly, he said, I had not expected PFCs would be found in a surgical mask, but we have special routine methods in our labs to detect these chemicals easily and can immediately identify them. This is a big issue, explained Dr. Sedlak. It seems this has been deliberately applied as a fluid repellent. PFC on your face, on your nose, on the mucous membranes, or on the eyes is not good. Along with PFCs, he also detected, besides the PFC cross-linkers, compounds such as formaldehyde and acetaldehyde, whereas a GCMS chromatogram showed, quote, hundreds of peaks from other contaminants, close quote. Like Sedlak, Braunert noted that surgical masks have been designed to be worn for very specific purposes, such as by clinicians or surgeons for a short period of time before being discarded. They are not designed to be crumpled up in people's pockets where the quote, friction and damp environment promotes both fiber abrasion and encourages bacterial colonization over time, close quote. This abrasion can, he says, cause the release of tiny microplastics as the propylene fibers break down from mechanical wear and tear. Finding in tests that some masks shred microfibers classed as hazardous dust by the German Social Accident Insurance. Fibers of this type of geometry that meet this dust standard are also referred to as WHO fibers after earlier work by the World Health Organization on asbestos. During an ongoing pandemic, most people are now wearing masks and face coverings made from traditional textile materials that would normally be used to make our clothing. Can I just finish this? I have like 2 sentences. A textile chemical expert, Phil Patterson of Color Connections, who also works for the highly respected ZDH Foundation on Chemical Management, says, in my opinion, textile masks do not begin to pass this most basic hazard test for kids for whom the risks of COVID have been categorically demonstrated to be minuscule. Thank you. My second topic is that at the orientation at the middle school where my child attends, I saw on the materials distributed that masks are optional, and in vaccinations, I don't refer to them as that, I believe they're an experimental injection that is known as gene therapy because it contains mRNA. That said, vaccines recommended. And my request to the district is that you stop recommending. If this body is separate from the other governmental bodies and you don't have to publicly say these things are recommended, I urge you to not. This is a family decision based on evidence that families research. My shirt says informed. It is my responsibility as a mother of a child to thoroughly research what all the doctors and scientists are saying. And I have to weigh who is telling the truth, who is deliberately misleading. That's my job. I am a ferocious mother, and I will defend my child to anyone, okay? And if I'm just begging you to do your due diligence, don't just take the CDC's word for it, and the FDA's word for it, and the current administration's word for it. We have never seen anything like this, where children and their parents are being lured by incentives. Oh, you can have fries and a milkshake if you get vaccinated. You can have, in Ohio, an entire college education paid for if you go get vaccinated. This is insanity. I'm completely off script. I'm not reading what I was going to read to you, but the science is here. My favorite source to get the facts is from a world-renowned medical doctor named Dr. Peter McCullough. And you can also research Dr. Robert Malone, who is the creator of mRNA vaccines, and he himself says people should not take the vaccines. I'm done. I have more I could say, but I just need to stop right now. Thank you.
All right. We have Jefferson County Sheriff Deputy Angie Corrin.
So as Angie is walking up, we have asked Angie, Deputy Corrin, to provide us some information to the board on the role of a school resource officer and the opportunity that Fairfield Community School District has due to the training that Deputy Corrin received this past year. One goal of the school resource officer is to bridge the gap between law enforcement officers and young people and increase positive attitudes toward law enforcement. So we're excited to have Deputy Corrin here and to give us some information. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I originally had a PowerPoint.
Angie, can you be in front of the mic,
sorry.
please?
I originally had a PowerPoint there's not a whole lot of opportunities here for PowerPoint, so bear with me, I'm gonna do by speech. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Angie Corrin. I work for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. I started there in 2006 as a jailer for 2 years, and then I was hired as a full-time deputy in 2008. I have served a few roles. I was given an opportunity to attend a recent training, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to actually increase my abilities as a sheriff's deputy, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. I'm also a lifelong resident of Jefferson County. I graduated in 2000, year 2000, and my family has been a part of the school district for a long time. Both my parents retired from Fairfield in the last few years. My mother was last year, so she's been for 30 years. So this all kind of started because we were wanting, the sheriff's office was wanting a way to get into the schools to kind of bridge the gap between law enforcement and the students, bring more of a positive attitude toward law enforcement, and then we were also wanting to touch on use of illegal substances and mental health, de-escalation, diversity, and things like that. So a lot of hot topics that have been going on in our nation. And we're also wanting to find ways to provide opportunities to teach kids and things like that. So, searching, I found the National Association of School Resource Officers.
Pay this girl a bonus.
So, I attended a training through the National Association of School Resource Officers. Obviously, we don't have a formal school resource officer program in our community, but NASRO covered everything that I listed. They're a not-for-profit organization founded in 1991, and they're dedicated to providing high levels of training for law enforcement officers, school administrators, and school professionals. So the main goal is to protect our schools and working in collaboration with all of these entities to keep the schools safe. They're widely known in Iowa. I went to a school resource officer basic class. In my basic class alone, we had 40 plus students. Most of them were from Iowa, but we also had some students from Missouri, Oklahoma, and I think somebody from Kansas. So the basic course was in Altoona for 5 days, and it covered several different topics, effective guest speaking. So this is outside of my comfort zone, and me being here today is something that I'm working on as far as listening. But social media and cyber safety and sex trafficking, understanding and developing successful relationships with diverse students, effects of youth trends and drugs on the school culture and environment, and understanding how the teen brain works and the different challenges to their development. The second course I took with NASRO was an advanced course, and that was a 3-day course, and it covered more things that involved school safety, a school resource officer as a leader when it comes to school safety, doing like the ins and outs of effective interviewing and investigations along with threat assessments. We did a little bit more on social media and technology. We learned about crime prevention through environmental design, which I'm not sure if anybody's ever heard of that. But the theory of CEPTED is is that the form, arrangement, and design of buildings and open spaces can encourage or discourage desirable behavior and criminal activity. So our actual practical at the end of this course was we were in a high school, we sectioned out the high school, and kind of went through and looked at the school as far as how it was sectioned, the natural surveillance, access management, territoriality, border maintenance, and inclusivity. And then I took another 2-day course with NASRO. It was the adolescent mental health training, and specifically geared toward mental health. Dealt with topics with adolescent development, how childhood experiences carry over to learning environments, recognizing behavioral health conditions, and how to prevent crisis and crisis intervention and de-escalation. So, the role of a school resource officer is a officer who is a career law enforcement officer deployed in community-oriented policing that is specifically geared toward school or our schools in collaboration, serving the school districts. Their goals are to bridge the gap between law enforcement and young people, increasing the positive attitudes toward law enforcement, teaching the value of the legal system, and promoting respect for people and property, reducing juvenile crime by helping students formulate an awareness of roles, authority, and justice, and teaching students how to reduce the likelihood of them becoming a victim of a crime. So NASRO has a triads concept, and I have a really nice PowerPoint picture of what that is. It's in your packet, actually. Most of the information that I'm going to cover today is in that one.
Okay.
Didn't get a copy for everybody, but you have one. So the triad concept places a law enforcement officer or a school resource officer as a teacher, a counselor and mentor, and a law enforcement officer. So what they talk about as far as a school resource officer as a teacher, we teach law-related education as well as non-related, law enforcement-related education. So a lot of it entails out-of-the-box topics that would allow an officer to be seen as a real person, not just a person. The law-related education is designed specifically to practically help students learn the value of the justice system to be better informed and effective citizens. And by giving them a realistic picture of laws and legal systems, we hope that students who want to invest and support in improving it. Also, if we want to relieve fears and students may have toward law enforcement and the juvenile system. Some of the topic examples, I met with some of the administrators, and they had some really great ideas, doing some brainstorming, and a few of the topic examples, speaking with some administrators, and then outside of that even, speaking with students about law enforcement, what types of law enforcement are out there, what career opportunities are available, how to get hired, what's the hiring process. Also, how to interact with law enforcement, what to expect during traffic stops, traffic accidents, calling 911, and how to be a good witness to an incident. There's also drug and alcohol preventions, we have social media, and internet safety. I threw in there emotional intelligence lesson plans. I included one of those actually in that packet. It actually came from Facebook. Facebook has a lot of really great lesson plans to keep kids safe on the internet. I think it's called Healthy Relationships. It's blue in my packet. So, also an officer would also collaborate with students, or I'm sorry, the staff, in order to teach them on things like safe school crisis training, so active shooter, bomb threats, or natural disasters. Or something that we discussed the other day was knowing the signs of impairment as far as, the use of illegal substances and, kids coming out of the school. Because, we have the open campus and, things may be happening at lunch or before or after school. So just some education just to talk about, what to look for. The second part of the triad is an SRO as a counselor or mentor. An SRO as a counselor or mentor is a caring adult involved with students to help them avoid destructive behaviors, make good choices, and survive family, socioeconomic, racial, and other circumstances present. An open door and an active listener, a role model. Somebody that gets to know students and demographics of the school in order to create, foster, and maintain authentic relationships with diverse communities and marginalized groups within the school. Works to establish rapport by keeping up with academic and extracurricular activities and chatting about mutual interests, and a source of referral to for students to appropriate community resources as needed. And I'll kind of touch base on that a little bit later on in my presentation. So the third part of the triad is law enforcement officer. So obviously it's the presence of a uniformed officer. The ultimate goal in mind as a law enforcement officer is to keep teachers, educators, students, and the community safe. The SRO acts as a liaison between law enforcement and the schools, and there's a couple ways that can happen. First is as far as coordinating trainings with the school district. Somebody like an SRO can be someone that can coordinate different entities as far as things like school disasters and the protocols that need to happen. So say, we need the fire department to be, at the training, the SRO can coordinate all of those things. They also assist in investigations. So an SRO isn't necessarily, we don't enforce school policies or punishments per se, that's not why we're there. But we do have special skills to help with investigations, and we work in collaboration with schools. It's, we may know things that they don't, and they know things that we don't. So, also something I find that's really important that's kind of came up with us is, as far as collaborating with the schools, is something that Cardinal does is a Handle with Care program, and Deputy Shattuck is the school resource officer at Cardinal Schools, and every morning he checks the call logs to see if there's been any contacts with young people in the community, and kind of gets an idea, well, if this person, they had a really rough day or really rough weekend, something happened, then they can convey that to the school and say, hey, this person might be having a rough time, you may want, this is why. Not necessarily giving them all that information, but just kind of giving them a heads up. One thing that I know as a law enforcement officer and going to different calls involving juveniles is I've gone to calls where there's a mental health crisis, and I don't always know what that person or what that student has for resources. And it would help me to know a little bit about what's going on at school, so I can help them, if that makes sense. And eventually the hope would be you could reduce the time or reduce the amount of times that the parents need to call law enforcement because that communication is there. So, moving forward, as far as the school district, obviously, I'm not a full-time officer in the schools, but I do want to spend time in the schools. This week's homecoming week, I'm going to try and hit every school. Today I went to Pence and played color tag for 2 hours. So that was a lot of fun. I planned on being at the high school on Friday. Really interested in seeing what this volleyball thing's about. So, like I said, they came up with a lot of good ideas the other day. Plan on doing those. If you guys have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me or ask away. So, and then in your packet, there's a few statistics as far as our contacts with juveniles in our community. That's including the Fairfield Police Department. The numbers might not be completely right because sometimes they aren't reported in. So calls don't always get reported as juvenile calls. So I'm not sure, how many times we've ever, the DHS assist and things like that. It's not always logged the same. So that's in there. Calls from, I believe, 2018 to present to each schools, or law enforcement related calls to each school since 2018 are in there. And then also there's some things from Cardinal Schools as far as their recommendations, what they do for agreements financially and just in the school in general.
Just a quick question: when you were taking these classes, were you meeting people who are already SROs, or was it mostly people who were just kind of learning?
Both. So some of them had been already in the school system. Both of my instructors have been in the schools, their respective schools, for a very long time. The advanced schools definitely had already certified basic instruction. So yes.
That seems really, you get a lot of good information from people who are already doing this and what impact they're having.
Absolutely. Deputy Shattuck in Wapello County has been an excellent resource for me. He's very knowledgeable and has a lot of really good ideas that I'd like to use even here. So.
Does he work with the Ottumwa School District too, or just Cardinal?
He does not, just Cardinal. Ottumwa has their own school resource officers. And I met them at the training as well. They've been there for a while, so.
Thank you. When you talk about being in full uniform at the school,
what's it look like?
Yeah.
Okay, so my full uniform day-to-day is, kind of looks like the chief deputy back there, except my vest is different. I have a load-carrying vest. And I wouldn't mind doing a little bit softer uniform just for the fact I'm playing tag for 2 hours, so I get really sweaty. But, I'm kind of, as long as it's a professional uniform, and I'm recognized as a law enforcement officer, that's the goal.
Do you carry your gun?
I do.
When you're in the schools too, do the other SROs do that?
Yes. There's actually like a debate about whether or not school resource officers should carry weapons in the schools, and it was more so yes, as far as being educating students on, hey, this is what a law enforcement officer looks like, this is what to expect, it's a tool for your toolbox, it's not something scary to be in the school.
I've seen it very successful in schools, so I'm very positive. I don't know what you are, but larger districts have them in all the buildings, more than one sometimes. And it doesn't come across as negative from my experience. It's a positive interaction that we don't always have.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
There's a lot of resources out there that I'm surprised we didn't have one actually a few years ago. So it's just kind of becoming automatic. And it's more for the interaction and support. You mentioned a few things on the drug issues and the mental health issues, being able to see things that the teachers in the classroom just might not be able to see administrators because you're seeing from a different perspective, you're hearing different things. And we don't always want to mix their own in the community. I think it's a good program.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was hearing a lot of overlap from things that we talk about in here every month and what you were saying too. So it definitely seems like there's a lot that's aligned in your training and the professional development that happens in the district too.
Yes, yeah.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
This isn't intended as any kind of a criticism of the program.
John, can you move
Oh,
closer to your line? please?
sorry. Is correct?
Yeah.
What? Where do I just speech?
Closer.
Closer.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Is it on? If I can, I'll take it.
Okay. How is the position funded? Is it funded in a partnership between the district and the sheriff's office, or is it comes fairly share of the sheriff's office? And how is your time divided between the time spent directly in the district and time spent in other duties?
That's a very good question. Part of that's out of my out of my control. So this isn't like an official program where we're putting money toward it at this time. It's just to kind of get our feet wet, have presence in the schools, learning opportunities, things like that. If it was to be more of a permanent thing, there are different ways that they are funded or different schools are funded. I did include some of those in the packet of surrounding areas. But yeah, it's kind of up to the school board or the schools and the administrators and the budget of the sheriff's office and the county. So above my pay grade.
I do know in Ottumwa, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
The school
Yeah.
district and that they share the money.
It varies in surrounding areas. Good.
Thank you very much. Very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. All right, and next we have Sarah McAvan from Student Report.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah McAvan. I am a senior at the high school. My parents are Patrick McAvan and Melissa McAvan. I'm involved in a lot of activities at the high school. I participate in volleyball and soccer, and I'm also involved in student council and FBLA and the National Honor Society. My future plans, I intend to go to college, and I've been looking at many colleges recently and narrowing down the search, and my major as of now is in science.
So what's happening at the high school?
A lot of things are happening at the high school. We have homecoming week this week, which is very exciting. We have all like I said, I was on student council, and so we've been planning for this week a lot and put a lot of work into it, so I'm very excited for the week.
As part of student council, are you already working on your 10-year reunion plans, or is that later in the year that you start getting into that?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that one yet, but let's see.
So do you have any volleyball games this week?
We do. We have a volleyball game tomorrow at Burlington. Hopeful for that outcome. I think we'll win that one.
Can you talk a little bit about the activities of homecoming this week and what does your week look like?
Oh, yeah. So today we had a sort of pep assembly. It was to announce the homecoming report. And tomorrow's a normal day. Wednesday is pretty much a normal day. Thursday is a very exciting day. We get released a little bit earlier, and we get to go and watch all of the guys who signed up play Ironman volleyball. And then later that night, we have a pep rally and a bonfire, and the girls get to play powder post football, which I'm also going to be playing. And then, of course, on Friday, we have our homecoming game, we have the parade, and dance.
Back to normal. Who do we play on Friday?
Friday, we also play teacup.
Very exciting. Love it.
How are you feeling about the trimesters?
So far, I'm liking trimesters. We haven't had to switch classes yet, which I think is where it'll feel a bit different. But in terms of the class sizes, or the class times and how long they are, I think that it's working really well. I think that the 2 hours last year was way too long. And I think that in years previous, 45 minutes might have been a bit too short. So the time that we have now, it's about 65 minutes per class period. I think is really working well. And it allows for time to get instruction and also do work, so less homework.
Well, that's valuable feedback. Thank you.
Is there a fall play this year?
There is a fall play. I'm not involved in it, but I know it's kind of a spin off of Harry Potter, and that's all I know about
Do you know when it is?
I wouldn't want to share the dates without knowing for sure. We promoted it at the assembly today along with things like the fourth. She neglected to share that.
Well, I was gonna ask if you were on court.
She's pretty humble.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. We always love to see the students and hear what's going on at the high school. So.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Board committee updates. We have a tech update.
Yes, we met on last Tuesday, I think, and a lot of the stuff was covered in John's report, I would say, pretty well, but some highlights have to do with the charging stations coming in, and there was a lot of installation work that had just been happening in the middle school to get the new charging stations in. Seemed like a lot of progress was going on that. There's still some investigation going into some of those batteries in the 11-inch MacBook Airs that are at the middle school. And we talked about ways to try to figure out are some of these batteries possibly defective? Is it a usage thing? Is it a software thing? We talked about some of the devices that had been returned or not returned yet. That's in the report pretty well too. We talked a little bit about a new live stream camera that we've actually discussed last year or 2 years ago, I think. It might be a little easier for people to use when they're live streaming an event, something like that. It's kind of more built into the camera as opposed to camera connected to a computer and the computer's doing the live streaming. And that's something I think that the activities director is going to purchase and should benefit the district here pretty soon, I think. We talked about some networking issues and tools to monitor networking stuff, and then also possible change at the high school regarding the intercom system is kind of older, and most newer ones end up being more computer network based, which kind of makes sense because you can have a lot more features involved, safety features, where between classrooms and the office, including emergency features and things like that. But it would be a project to figure out exactly what that would cost and what additional wiring might be needed. It's kind of balanced because with the old system, you're getting to the point where you can't get parts anymore, and so it gets quite expensive to maintain also. So anyway, we talked a lot in the tech committee meeting. reaching out to the community for, you know, when that funding runs out, the main cost is the personnel, right? And so we talked a lot more about this model of saying organizations and institutions in town that share that goal of you know, this positive, safe learning environment for kids, collaborating with them and coming up with a few different models where, for example, the library, the children's librarian, youth services librarian may come on a regular basis, sort of one day a week or something, and provide some programming and provide some staffing when you look at it from our budget standpoint. Or there might be other institutions who might come for 1 week, for example, and bring their own kind of curriculum that might be a little more similar to last year's 4-H's bike rodeo, where they had 2 to 3 days of programming that fits with their goals and overlaps really well with our goals, and we can kind of host them and everybody benefits. So we talked more about that, so it was a good meeting for the after-school program.
Are they still looking for or needing help after school to help?
I would want to check with Katie. I would say pretty much.
Yeah, I would say yes, that we need more people. We have like, I think it's at 200 almost at Fence.
We're at 150 right now.
150. And I know Washington, you're at 86, and the middle school. So, you know how many students are
55
there? 55. So, we can always use more hands on deck. She's looking for people that have passion in different areas that would like to maybe have a small club with a group. This would be another opportunity. Yes.
It's very popular in my house. My son's been going on Tuesdays and Fridays, and he reports he likes a variety of choices that he can choose from, and it's been very positive.
Great. Thank you for that. We had curriculum. Or not curriculum, we had policy.
We had policy meeting, we were going over a couple of policies. John, do you remember what they were?
No, I was afraid you were going to ask me that question. What have you been addressing recently? Well, we took a look at some of those policies with regard to in regard to appropriate conduct at school events and this sort of thing. But there wasn't really anything that jumped out right now that demands the board's attention at this particular moment. But it's the regular work of the policy committee and just sort of working through each piece. And I wouldn't say there was anything that was worth bringing to the attention of the whole board at this time.
Yeah. Well, Robin wasn't able to attend, and we need her to kind of go over our finance policies, which are the next batch, 700, right? So we were just looking at some of the, even some of the policies we'd actually approved. We broke down the document. Okay, anything else? Facilities, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So, admin reports.
Fast testing, I'm always interested in any interpretations you have. I saw the results, reading myself, but takeaways that you had, interested to hear.
Yeah. So far, we're not quite done testing. We're still finishing testing this week, but I'm encouraged by the results. So, unlike the lower elementaries, I think the middle school had that foundational level already matched or built. So we can continue to go up, of course, but we're encouraged by the results so far.
And just practically, this is your first year with like one-to-one? Were you using those for the testing, or is it still more of a lab situation?
Yep, so, we don't have any more labs, it's all one-to-one, so we're all doing all of our back testing, our back testing through the one-to-ones.
I always enjoy administrative reports, so there's so many good things, but, Brian, I really appreciated what you put in here, the diagrams and visuals, and, you know, we have the North Star, we got it pretty well. We know what North Star is, but just this, how this ties all the goals and outcomes all tie to everybody. I related to it very well, because that's the way businesses do it. So, I'm sorry. So anyway, I really appreciate that, but just everything that we got going on, we got so many pulls and pushes in the community, so thank you, everybody, for the report you gave us.
I want to second the, what Tim was saying about these diagrams and what you're working on with the staff. I think that's great. Has it been received really well too?
I would say yes. It'll be exciting, as we get together, our next PD, we're gonna, look at what we had, see what type of progress we've made, and then, that's the beauty of the tool, is the flexibility, the simplicity of it, to then just reapply and start working through it again, and it just keeps working down, so to speak. So I'm excited about it. Maybe a little more excited about it than they are, but it's coming along. The high school staff are very fortunate. They're willing to try new things, and if we're not, then how can we expect that of our students?
What I really appreciated learning more about the theater. I love your goal for having your students 100% involved in extracurricular activities. I think that's great. Has it been, are the kids participating?
Yeah. We have over 250 that have applied for leadership positions. Yep, so we have 250 that have applied for some of our leadership positions, just as like a leadership role within the school. And then, I can't give you a number right now, but we have lots that are doing the after-school program, 55 for 5th and 6th grade for the after-school program. Plus all of our 7th and 8th graders that are doing the after-school activities and extracurriculars. And we've got, art club starting soon and some other clubs starting soon too, so yeah, lots of participation.
I wouldn't mind bringing your attention to Mark Branch and the transportation. They are sending home scanned cards, some at Washington School. So those would be in children's backpacks. I think even this week, Mrs. Townsend, is there? Someone going home today. Some going home today. So parents in Washington, look for those little icons, and that there's a letter too. Did that go home today? Okay, so that's exciting that that app is starting, that parents will be able to start seeing their children.
Yeah, that's great. Are the badges, do we have them on like lanyards, or how are we gonna?
They were just the bundles of packets of cards that were given to the students that were being lanyards provided.
I think are they gonna put them on the backpacks?
They've got I guess, not lanyards, they do have the same, like they look like a zip tie type thing that we put their bus information on their backpacks. So there is that.
And for the kids, well, when they get on the bus, they'll put on their badge, and then parents can watch and know when their student is getting off. I think that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's definitely got safety benefits and everything, and I think it's becoming a little more table stakes along with some of these other bus features, because tracking to see exactly where the bus is kind of goes along with it too, which always seems like a great idea to me, to see, hey, if this bus has been stopped for 5 minutes with no explanation, that's really good information to have, right? Like, someone gets on the bus with a friend that a parent even forgot they were going to do that or something, I think it makes it much smoother. We've talked about that in technology meetings in the past too. It seems like a real win to me.
What happens if they have a friend still on the bus? Who doesn't have a bus driver?
So they will, if, let's say a friend wants to go home with another friend on the bus, they can, they'll know about it. The bus driver will know about it ahead of time. That child's little tag will be a green go for the bus. If the child just decides on their own to go, then it will be a red mark and they will let people know this child should not be on the bus.
So every child will have a card regardless if they're a bus driver.
Eventually, well, if they are not they should. That's a good question, and I'm not 100% sure on that.
I just remember I would ride the bus.
Yeah.
With friends home sometimes.
Yeah.
Typically, a student can't do that without a bus pass from the main office. That makes sense.
Okay.
If that's not your normal route, you'd have to have a pass from the office.
But I don't know if they would have a tag though.
But that would catch you.
Yeah, but that would
But
help
that
catch them. And we do that right now.
Yes.
And the driver's on there. Who's supposed to be on the bus.
Right. We need to emphasize too that the bus shortage of drivers and everything. If you've got a substitute driver, that helps them too. They know who's on the bus and stuff. So it's more than just the driver knows that other drivers can step in and be able to support that too.
I know this is something that we've talked about wanting for a long time, so I'm excited that it's here. All right, anything else for admin reports? All right, then we'll move on to new business. So starting on page 99. Can I get a motion to approve the FFA trip to the National FFA Convention in Indianapolis, Indiana?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? This is a trip we go on every year.
Yes.
FFA.
Well, do they do it every year?
And we have to approve it because it's going out of state, is that right? Correct. Any other discussion?
How many students do you think? 10, right?
That's what she said.
Yeah, it's 10 plus chaperones. Every year they come back all jazzed and, you know, I mean, it's a really good program. So.
Great opportunity.
Oh, it's fun to hear about all
And I guess, I know the chaperones will do the driving. Are they employees of the school?
I don't know that all of them would be.
Can you speak up on it?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that all of them would be. I know we've had some that have not been in the past.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends on the interest of this, what Courtney shared with me.
They do all go through Mark Branch.
Yeah, yes.
With making sure that they qualify.
Holly, did you have?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say is with down here at the bottom was the names. Does that create an issue with this at this particular time?
It's the old board member.
Yes.
The old rep member.
So I don't know if we have to make an amendment to this for the names.
No, current board members.
Or just note it as current board members. I just didn't want there to be an issue later on.
Yeah, right.
No, I appreciate you catching that.
I will correct it on the minutes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So next, can I get a motion to approve the elementary handbook for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Just the basic handbook. No major changes there.
Any changes from last
They're highlighted.
year?
No, I was just perusing, it. There's just one section.
Chapter 103 is
Yeah.
changed.
That's it.
There's some other ones, technology and stuff. The student expectations.
Any other discussion about it? I know, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So next, I get a motion to approve the updates to the 2021-2022 Return to Learn plan.
Seconded.
And discussion.
Well, the biggest change in my mind is the change in the law regarding mask rules in the district. So I think that would be a pretty good place to start the discussion, personally. In my personal experience, I would say, just from minor observations at the beginning and end of school, there's probably not a lot of mask wearing, but I also would say it has been changing somewhat since the beginning of school. But I would say it remains quite low. That's in my observation. But that's not an official count or anything, just what I've seen. And so we've gotten a lot of email and a lot of feedback from different people. For me, it was a good time to revisit the latest updates from places like the CDC, the American Association of Pediatrics, and obviously hear from our teachers about their experiences and stuff. I feel much more secure now when making these kinds of decisions than I felt last year. I feel like when we were looking at things last year, there were not a lot of conclusive studies, and there was not a lot of direct guidance from health experts on what our county, for example, or our district should be doing. And if you go on the CDC website today or tomorrow, whenever it is, you can look up Jefferson County, Iowa, and as of today, it says community transmission is high. Everyone in Jefferson County, Iowa should wear a mask in public indoor settings. And that is very clear and direct guidance, which is something we did not have last year. Similarly, the American Association of Pediatrics, which you may have remembered from our discussion of hybrid learning too, they were guiding against hybrid or virtual learning in almost any circumstance. the American Association of Pediatrics is very clear that all students older than 2 years and all school staff should wear face masks at school unless medical or developmental conditions prohibit use. That is something that's come up in some of our emails that we've received, is students with developmental conditions and in those special cases. Now, I also wanted to call attention that we do have some curriculum in our school where the actual curriculum relies on teachers seeing the mouth of the student, which I think is a really important point. And if you get more into the American Association of Pediatrics recommendations, they include information about, using common sense in conjunction with their guidance in situations like that, which I think is really important consideration. But for me, spending the time on this, using all the resources available, I think that we should amend the Return to Learn document to say that mask or face coverings will be required when the CDC guidance for Jefferson County states that everyone should wear a mask in public indoor settings. That gets updated quite frequently based on the CDC's measurement of community spread. And I'd say as soon as, the moment their guidance changes for our county, I think we should change with it.
I would totally agree with that. Jefferson County is in a high transmission rate. If you look up the CDC guidance, the third, I'll use my teacher voice. The third bullet on the CDC's key takeaways says, due to the circulating and highly contagious Delta variant, CDC recommends universal indoor masking by all students aged 2 and older, staff, teachers, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. And the kids and the teachers and everybody spend 7 hours a day in the same inside room. And our county's numbers are going up every week. In fact, now we are at the same point that we were last November, when it was so bad. We're exactly there now. Why wouldn't we do the same thing we did last November?
Doesn't work.
Excuse me, excuse me, I need everybody in the audience not to talk right now when we're having our conversation. Okay? Thank you.
So I think one of the things that I'm seeing every day, I struggle with this because I've done everything I can to keep people 6 foot apart so they don't have to wear masks.
You're talking about at your work?
In my work. And just today I had 4 people in one area that called in because of COVID. So we had to kind of regroup. We're doing this every day, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars last year. And family members die. And family members spend a week in ICU. But I think it's not one of those one size fits all. I think there's been a proposal of a matrix of when you do and when you don't. If you can't have the kids separated in the classroom, then you do. When you can, you don't have to. My concern is can the teachers, looking at before, can the teachers manage that? Is it kind of like when you go to the playground and it's muddy, you can't go out and you got to stay in the concrete, right? The blacktop. We seem to be able to manage that. Preschoolers seem to be the easiest ones to have wear a mask. Of course, they're the ones that are under 3 years old or whatever. I've seen it, personally seen it, how easy it is. The whole shot thing, you believe what you want, do what you want. I've had members that I know that had the shot and got COVID and ended up in the hospital. So the shot doesn't do it. But I also had members that I know that had the shot and were have minor conflicts with it. I'm not an advocate of the mask, but I do know there's a time when you got to wear the mask. The issue I have with people not wearing their masks is not to protect them, it's to protect others. And that's where we have the issue. Society's got to be about me instead of everybody else. And I'm really getting very frustrated with that because I have to deal with that every day too. But I think I'm going to go back. I still think it needs to be variable. But how that variability works, I don't have a really good answer. What I do know is when I've got issues in an area, that's my variability. That's when I have to take action. Yeah, it's probably too late, but I've got to do something. I can't just let it happen. And that's where, in order to, I had one area in my shop where I had 80% of the people gone. It cost me lots of money. And you think about what it's costing our students. We don't know the long-term effects. And I'm very concerned about that. So, anyway, go ahead.
I need to piggyback on what Tim says, but let me just be clear. As you can see, I'm not wearing a mask. I've been vaccinated. Being diabetic, I get the next booster if it's possible. I believe in vaccines, if not, or whatever. Last year, I did go ahead and vote for masking, and I believe in masking. However, I believe in a variant. I believe in versatility of it. I work in a school that has more students in a building than we have almost in this entire district. I've had students in my classroom that have been tested positive for COVID. And when I am in the front of my classroom and I am 6 feet away from them, I do not have my mask on and I lecture and I do what I have to do. But when a student raises their hand and says, Mr. Scott, I need help, I put my mask on when I lean over their shoulder and I get inside their personal space. And I think that that's possible to do that this way with some sort of variant with it, if it's in the green, if it's in the yellow, whatever, I agree with that. But as far as making a mandate right now that encompasses everybody all the time, I cannot in good conscience ask our teachers, even though I believe in masking, I cannot in good conscience ask our teachers to do what I do not have to do. And so therefore, I really believe that we should do the variant kind when it stays in green. I understand that. Because we got to do something. We can't just throw our hands up, but I can't be hypocritical and just go ahead and make a blanket.
Well, from my perspective, the matrix model is the classic example of closing the barn door after the horse is out of the gate. It's a the variant that we're dealing with is, in many ways, we are in a different pandemic than we were last year. And so in some ways we have lessons that we can learn and apply. And in other ways we have to adapt to the conditions as they change, the variables as they change. And again, I very much support the position that Frank has laid out, which is that I think that there needs to be, it's clear from, even though we said we strongly recommend masks, that clearly ain't working. And now that we have this legal loophole that allows us to use a policy that will in fact result in higher mask usage, when we know that mask usage, when faced with an airborne virus that spreads through particles in the air, and that is highly contagious, is effective, I think it's absolutely irresponsible of us, in fact, not to do that, not to follow that advice. This is not a matter of personal choice. This is a matter of public health, which is a matter of collective action, not personal choice. And again, it's our responsibility to create policies that preserve the health and safety of the students, staff, and community members here in Fairfield. And if that requires an action such as this, which I would stipulate the facts on the ground, so to speak, quite clearly do. Again, taking any action other than the one that is open to us now to mandate mask wearing is absolutely, completely, utterly irresponsible.
I would second that, it's not just irresponsible from a moral standpoint. The judge that made the decision said that if we don't do that, then we can be in violation of the civil rights of those who need more protection. And we are pretty much in the habit of following the law. Granted, it's a gray area right now. Nobody's actually decided that law. But I would say it seems like it's leaning towards we have to protect everyone. The community. We have to offer school for everyone, not just those that feel comfortable with no masks, but for people that are immunocompromised and all of that. We've always prided ourselves that we offer education to all. I've worked in public education for 30 years of my life, and that has always been what I'm very proud of, is that we offer all of the education and the opportunities to everyone, regardless of their health status, their socioeconomic status, or anything else. And it's one of those.
I agree in the teacher aspect of that. I think at this point we are trying to hold back the ocean because this is a county problem. This is a community problem. We are trying to hold back the ocean with a teaspoon at this point. And again, that's why I agree in having a variant, like, hey, if we as a community can't get our act together enough to keep us out of this group, then we deserve to wear masks. But at this point, I can't get on board with that. I have to rely on the variant. Because I think we're the only thing in the community that would require a mask, other than individual businesses. I mean, kid leaves here and gets with their parent, goes to Walmart.
Well, there are definitely other institutions. For example, the public library, when the CDC changed their guidance, they went back to requiring masks, and it's been quite successful. I do want to agree with the points as far as things are concerned legally. I would not be surprised if tomorrow some sort of appeals court judge blocked the block to the ban of the mandates, and in that case, so be it, right? But as it stands now, the responsibility is on us to make this decision. And for me, the fact that we have such clear information that's directed to our exact geographical area and is up to date by the day from our country and possibly the world's leading medical resources in this area, it makes it a clear decision for me. I wish we had this for snow days. I wish we could go on a map and have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association say, if you are in this area and you have this many buses, you should cancel school today. They won't do that, right? They will give information. They will help you make that decision. But they don't give such clear guidance. It's a rare, valuable resource, in my opinion, to have such clear guidance and also to have such consistent guidance from not just the CDC, but also the American Association of Pediatrics and on and on. But tomorrow, if there's a new law in the legislature or there's a new ruling by a different judge, then that's tomorrow. But for today, if someone's asking us as a group, I think we should rely on these excellent resources that are available to us, as opposed to, the matrix that we came up yesterday was in the absolute vacuum of such guidance. And I think it was good for what it was. It was a collaboration. It worked for what we needed, but we didn't have this last time, and we have it now. So I think we should make use of it.
I agree with Frank and John, and I have nothing more to add, really. I mean, I think everything has been said.
I guess I would like to make us think about those long-term effects. The viruses do have long-term effects, and if you're old like me, you might have had shingles because you had chickenpox as a kid. So you get vaccines for chickenpox now. If you're old like me, you might know people that are suffering from post-polio syndrome right now. I happen to know 3 of them in my life. They had polio when they were little children too. It's just a virus, just spreading around, and they were young. And they didn't die, but they've lived with it their whole life. And now there's no doctors around that even know what the heck to do for them.
Yeah.
But they suffered their whole life already. And I have not, in good conscience, let myself do something that might put children in that position.
Can I add to that just briefly that again, I think that this is a moment where we have to come together as a community and do what's right for the vast majority of people, both in this community and across the state, right? We have people who need cancer treatments, who need things that are not related to COVID, who cannot get them because there are ICU beds that are dangerously low. And that is, again, it's something that we have to factor into our decision, is that we are here to make policy to preserve the common good. And sometimes the common good requires making difficult collective decisions. And I think this is one of them, where we have to think about several different layers. Yes, it's unfortunate that, I hate wearing this damn thing. But I do it both because of my own DNA, but also because having lost a first cousin to this disease, having lost a close friend, has it personally scarred me? Absolutely. But even more important is that I do it for my community because I don't want to accidentally pass it to someone and have them lose their cousin, or have them lose their friend, or have them lose their child, or have them not have an ICU bed for their cousin or their child. Again, damn it, we need to act like a community. And that's one of the wonderful things about this institution, is that we are a public school, which means that it is our responsibility, far above even the most civic-minded private employers, to do the right thing for everyone, right? We try to do that for every child in every room, every day, right? Well, education is not our only mission. Also, trying to make sure that we are improving the quality of life broadly writ in this community, which I think, again, leads us to only one conclusion, which is that we need a mask mandate because that serves the best of the tools that we have, and none of them are perfect. It best serves the common good in this very terrible moment in which we find ourselves. And I think that, again, that we're making a terrible decision if we do not take this chance to serve the common good.
I would like to make a motion to amend the Return to Learn document to say that masks or face coverings will be required when the CDC guidance for Jefferson County states that everyone should wear a mask in public indoor settings. Yes, I would like to move that we amend the Return to Learn document to say masks or face coverings will be required when the CDC guidance for Jefferson County states that everyone should wear a mask in public indoor settings. That's the language that's on the CDC website. It's updated daily, and I think the wisest choice is to put that into our Return to Learn, and when that changes, it doesn't require board approval.
I want to say this loud enough that they can hear it in Sioux City. Second.
All in favor to vote on the amendment?
So let's make sure everybody's clear on what we're doing here, because this is just a modification to what's presented in the Return to Learn plan.
Yes.
This is not voting for or against the Return to Learn plan that we
Right.
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 So can you repeat that
Yes.
again? Because one of the things are we in discussion mode?
Yeah, we're still in discussion.
One of the things that concerns me about that is I'd rather it was based upon some numbers for our area and our infinite wisdom in some areas that I supported and support don't give us real-time data anymore.
From the state, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
And which is keeping our hands tied a little bit. Which they took upon themselves to do something at 11 o'clock at night that they should have never done.
I agree.
Without any input. And I support the group that did it. But I can't support making decisions without the proper communication. And public input. So anyway, that is what it is. But I want to make sure, what I'd like to see is something that's data driven with numbers.
Yes.
And that really isn't. It's a yes or no decision.
No, well, it's yes or no, but they are pretty clear about their methodology on the website, and it's based on a 7-day rolling average of positivity rate.
Right.
Now, to your point, though, if we rewind 1 year, that 7-day rolling average is based on daily releases of information.
Right.
I believe currently it's based on weekly releases of information on Thursdays, and there's a chance that it could become even less frequent. That being said, that would be the same data that we would have access to for the most part. And I would put the ability of the Centers for Disease Control to interpret it higher than my own personally. But I do want to say that it is very clearly based on that spread data, and they're pretty clear about their methodology on the website.
And I mean, I would say, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the data, the state has done the state should be ashamed of itself because of the poor data collection and reporting that it has done. But I think one of the good things about it is that in a condition like this, actually having lagging data actually isn't such a bad thing, because it means that if let's say that we make a decision that is, in terms of sort of facts on the ground, is lagged by a couple of weeks, then that means that we're most likely going, let's say that the downward trend actually happens a couple of weeks before we make a change. What it means is that we're very likely to make sure that when we do remove the mask mandate, that we're not just going to see another spike again. And so, like I say, I absolutely agree. You got to have some kind of a data point, but having the 4 data points that we have, I think actually is a kind of could be a kind of blessing in disguise.
The other thing, though, the CDC has basically recommended mask wearing since it started, right? So the recommendation would be the same.
I don't think that was the case, for example, in June. But I don't
recommend it.
Right, but I think it's different. At that time, it was different for vaccinated or unvaccinated. I don't think there's a way on the website to historically go back and see the change. I think you can just kind of see the current. But if you look on the county map, there are plenty of counties around the country where they don't have the same recommendation that they have for Jefferson County, Iowa. And I can't read the future any better than anybody else, but my informed hope is that the spread numbers go down and that the guidance changes, and I would be delighted to see that and delighted to see our policy follow with it. And, I think the strongest argument against mask wearing in the schools is that some of this curriculum can suffer when a teacher can't see a student's mouth. That is true. At the same time, when students are completely out of school for long periods of time or even a couple days, that's a huge hit too, right? And so I really think that when you put the other things aside and you look at it just from a learning standpoint, we're paying a pretty big cost as it is. And when you look at absences at the high school and absences that we're suffering, and we know that a lot of it has to do with COVID, we're sacrificing learning in that way also. So it's really, I think, has to be a balance where we're considering the impact that masks can have in classrooms on learning versus the impact that no masks have on students who are at home, and we don't have that kind of virtual accommodations that we had last year.
But we kind of do, don't we? I mean, if I know myself, I have a kid that's out with COVID. I tell him what we got to do, and he goes on our Schoology, and he does it at home, and he doesn't come back. And when he comes back, I mean, we have that here. Our teachers can do that on the individual basis. And I would be even more on board. Again, I believe in the masking, but I just can't do it. Is if there was a real threat of prolonged hybrid learning, but there's not, because the state has tied our hands on that as well. We can close down a couple days to clean and all that kind of stuff, but prolonged hybrid doesn't happen now. So I think we could combat that, and I think it could be done. And again, that's why I'm more, barn after the horse is gone. I just believe in the graduated one versus wholeheartely. I'm sorry.
I want to hop on that and agree. I know, like, whatever decisions we make, I know we're going to make half of the community angry, and the other half of the community is going to be happy. So we're in a position right now where we have to try and do what we think is best for the kids and our community, regardless of what the outcome is in terms of trying to toe that line, because it's like people are going to be angry one way or the other. But I'm agreeing. I think that having the matrix where people can see what's happening, and they can see that, okay, right now it might be that we need to be wearing masks because the community spread is high, but that they know when it's going to go down and when they stop, and they have that ability to see that as well. And so I like the matrix that Dr. Knoll put together. Can you pull that up?
I guess I would say that if that matrix was based on all of Jefferson County, that would make sense. But all our employees and students, they don't sleep at school. They go home. They go out in the community. So if the community transmission is high, we should pay attention to that. And our community is 42% vaccinated. That means it's 58% not vaccinated. Those are the people that are supposed to be wearing masks. I don't see that in this community. We all know that. We don't see it. But no, the community, the school is part of a larger community. I don't know how we can make a matrix that doesn't include the larger community. Well, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does include it. One thing that we know for a fact right now is that based on the matrix that we created, wearing masks is not recommended. And the Centers for Disease Control is pretty clear that for everyone in Jefferson County, Iowa, they should be wearing a mask in public indoor settings. So to me, we've got some pretty clear evidence that the matrix that we created, not for mask wearing, by the way, we created it for determining in-person, hybrid, or virtual learning. We know for sure that it doesn't align with recommendations of the medical experts who are willing to give us their assessment of our area. So as much as I think we worked together and came up with a good matrix for a different purpose at a different time, I really think the facts show that it doesn't apply to masking in the time we're in now.
And just to pick up on this hybrid issue, because I do think this is really critically important, which is that, again, we don't have that, that's one place where our hands are tied, right? And so let's assume, and it's also one of the things that we learned last year, this is one of the things we can't apply, is that people hated hybrid, right? And they hated online because we couldn't provide those kinds of, in order to make that work, we needed vast amounts of resources to connect people in ways that would allow people to not have to quit jobs. I mean, it was a terrible, but I think necessary decision in the midst of where we were then. But of course, now we realize just how much damage it, well, one, we can't do it anyway, and two, we don't want to get anywhere near having to do it because of the damage it does. And I think that I think that's one of the things that recommends a mask mandate at this point, is that it helps keep something akin to a normal school operating in ways that we have been told repeatedly by most of the people in this community they want and they need, because they don't have wraparound services that allow them to find places to put their kids, right? We tried that, and we just don't have the resources to make it work. So this, as negative, as many negatives as there are with it, I really feel like it's a bridge to keep us from having to get anywhere near that place where we know bad things happen, as we saw it.
This is our current COVID number of cases, right?
Yep. This is picked up. This is COVID cases in our school district. And so let me go back up to the top. We, on a daily basis, we do look at our student absences. Our student data support secretary collects this on a daily basis from every school. It's not just COVID illnesses. This is all absences that are happening within each school. And so we have that reported on a daily basis. Then we look at our school nurses, collect data from all of the schools on students that are positive, that have positive cases, and we daily report this information and put it on the website so that you can see within our community of our school who is positive with COVID.
I have a question on
yes,
that.
Yes.
Do we notify the people in the classroom that there was a positive case in the classroom?
Yep, if there are 2 cases of COVID within a classroom, letters go out. For example, a letter went out today for like a 3rd grade class. So those parents are informed that there were 2 positive cases within that classroom. So they are informed if it's of that group. So
and at the high school we do that too?
At the high school we do not, because we cannot, it would be every single classroom that the kids would change through. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, right?
You're correct.
Okay, so.
I thought my grandmother did letters like that. We have 6 classes. I don't know
Well,
what
and
do that.
we could talk with our school nurse to see if that would be a possibility on all 6
But then
classes.
people make informed decisions.
Sure.
If they don't know, how do they make an informed decision?
Let me make a note on that. We will talk
And
with our
maybe that's
school
why
nurse.
we have a 15% absence rate at the high school. Because the whole time I've been a board member, we prided ourselves on a 5% absence. It's not just orthopedic appointments and chiropractor appointments. It really is COVID. Quite probably, because we've never had that until now. Not the whole time I've been on the board.
I'm a big fan of the dashboard. I know several people who check it daily and appreciate knowing the data that there is to share, but I do want to make the point that this is what we know about, right?
Correct.
That this is not intended to be an accurate representation, for example, of how many students in our district have COVID. It's the confirmed cases that we know about. And it's important to be transparent with that data, which is why I'm a big fan of this. But when considering, we should know it's incomplete, like all COVID data. So you take it for what it is and not for what it isn't.
And it's like one data point that you can look at. And I will pride our school nurses and our staff if they hear of someone that is out and the reason, then they report that to the school nurse. The school nurse does do check-ins with the families and the students for that information. So you can see as of this afternoon, there are 22 positive COVID cases within our district of over 1,600 students. There are 22 students or 22 staff. So when I look at that 22 number, it's not just our students, it's also our staff that are included in that number, our bus drivers, our food service, our associates, our maintenance, everyone is within those 22 that are listed. So when you compare that to where we are, it tells you, you know, that it's the spread within our school is not as much. We look at who we isolate. We do isolate. We recommend to our families if they have a positive in their family, we recommend that they isolate or quarantine. But they don't have to by law, but we do recommend it. Doctors are recommending it to families. If they do go in and get a test, they are recommending that they do quarantine with their ones.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
About that. So if we have a family who has an asymptomatic child who has tested positive, and they have another family member who is not asymptomatic and tested positive, are you saying that that asymptomatic child who's positive doesn't have to quarantine?
No, if they have been tested positive, then they are to quarantine.
So it's only those that have been in contact that you're saying don't
Correct.
have to. Okay.
Correct. Like possibly a parent is positive, but the child is not. That child would not have to. We would recommend it. Many times the physician will recommend it. However, they do not have to take that recommendation. Many do.
Can we make the tests available? Because it sounds like they are readily available.
They are readily available. Our school nurses and our county health have asked that they would get those from there. The school nurses are not wanting to have that liability on them with as far as who then follows up with that person with their testing, who made sure that it was turned in, who made sure that they consulted with the student or the family member on that part of it. That liability, our school nurses would prefer that they would get that and do that with the county health and follow up with that. Now, they do follow up with the families on the other side of that.
You know, it's the testing that they're getting done in county health. Is it, are there any rapids that they can get done right there? Or is it the one that gets the mail in to the hygienic lab?
Currently, it's the mail-in that you have, from what I know.
I don't think it's, you can't hardly get a rapid test. It's very unfortunate.
And
Can you speak up? Jim?
You can't hardly get rapid tests. There a few months ago you could, which made it very good for employers because you could send somewhere, get the test, get the test results, and you're back on task right away. Now you can't, which makes it even worse.
Was that the Test Iowa?
No, well, I was through that, but I don't know. It's just the rapid test is available through, like drugstores and so forth. But now you've got to do the self-test where you send it off. And I've had people have to wait a week to get the results back. It's terrible.
Really?
yeah, that's been, in my experience, it's always half a week at least, and it can be longer. I mean, if you live in Coralville, you can just drive it over to the State Hygienic Laboratory and you get your results much faster. But if you're including the UPS in there, and then there's a little bit of time after they receive it, I would say it's a minimum probably of 3 or 4 days before you get results, is what I've been getting.
I will say I had to have one of my employees to do a test through the public health because they were traveling and they were required to have a negative test. And they did it Thursday afternoon. We had the results on Saturday morning. This was just last week.
Well, that's
I've
faster
been
than
waiting
I've
for an
seen.
employee to come back since last Tuesday. He didn't have results as of this morning.
To get back to it's still on the same topic, but when we're talking about testing and students and families, for example, if you imagine a family who would prefer to send their student to school, even though they likely have COVID, the only thing they need to do to accomplish that is decline to test the student, right? And so this is very much a family decision, and we should expect that different families will handle it different ways. But I think we can be quite confident that across the district we're likely to have situations where there are family members who know they have COVID, and they would choose not to have the students tested to give them the opportunity to come to school if they wanted to. And going back to our our CDC and everything, I do want to make the point, I think we probably all know this, but the CDC's summary on masking is that it's a combination of source control and wearer protection, right? Like the mask needs to be on the face of the person who has COVID for this to work as a group. There's benefits to both, but it's like I got a letter earlier this week. My son was exposed to lice in his classroom. This is normal. This has happened to me in every situation I've had a young kid in, but you have to deal with it at the source, right? You got it. The student who's bringing the lice into the classroom, it has to be addressed. And I feel like it's similar with the masks. They need to be on the face of the person who has COVID. And you know, our data that we have, it's great that we share it. It's great that we analyze it. It's what we have, but it's limited. And there's a lot of opportunity for people who would rather not say to just not be tested, and then they're not subjected to any of the rules about staying home.
Well, speaking of, this is the part of the dashboard that I have had the greatest skepticism with regard to the whole time. And I'd like to know, like, what are we doing in terms of making sure that we don't disincentivize staff members from coming in sick when there's a real financial incentive to not miss days. I mean, are we making sure? I mean, I know that in the last year we had some robust policies that tried to disincentivize that. Do we still have those policies in place?
We do not.
Okay. That's good. I mean, it's not good to know, but I think
At that point, we did have some of the finances that would support that and have that. This year, we have not done that.
again, that's clarifying.
We still check temperatures, things like that, if there's any concern or whatever, then send the kids home.
If if the children go to the clinic, or even we've had staff that would go get their temperatures checked, and I see some heads shaking, that we do that.
So we're doing what we can to prevent it.
And we're still doing extra cleaning and everything else, obviously.
We're doing the extra cleaning and fogging in the classrooms and on the desks.
Now, some districts are looking at pre-K through 6. I see some advantages on that, because then your older kids have the advantage. They can go get the shot. Does not mean you're not going to get it, but at least they can go get the shot. So you've got a little bit of prevention there. That's the individual has. Kids under that 6 don't right now, right?
Under 12.
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade, I see. Yeah.
12 years old, which is a concern, you know. You just, what is it you can do to protect everybody? Can't do everything. You gotta do the best we can. Temperature checking, making sure. You know, the one thing that irritates me most, I had to send 2 people home this morning because of it. They came in, they were sick, they had cold-like symptoms, they had a temperature, they were exhausted, and I'm like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. And they're thinking, well, I can't make any money if I'm not here. And I said, I understand that, but I can't make any money, the business can't make money if you're here sick, contaminating other people too. Which is just like doing the same thing with kids. You know, people got to take some ownership of this, and it's got some doggone political. It just drives me nuts. It's not about politics. It's about being sick or healthy. You know, how long ago people were sick, they stayed home. That's what they got to do now. Same way with the kids. If they're sick, they stay home. How do we keep that? So that's the number one preventative right there. Whether you wear a mask or not. So just got to people got to do what's socially correct instead of all about me.
Well, again, though, like I say, like that's the thing. Like we don't have the money. We just simply don't have the funds to make sure that folks don't have to choose between a paycheck and going to work sick. One thing we can do, because that doesn't cost us any money, is put a mask mandate.
And then when we have those people who, for whatever their circumstance is, they come to school and they suspect they may, be COVID positive, they have a mask on, and the science is very clear that that helps prevent the spread to others.
Now, what do we do if we have a mask mandate and we have our football team, our volleyball team, and everything? How do we can't ask them to wear masks when they're playing. Why not?
Well,
They did in Arizona.
there's a difference between indoors and outdoors, for one, but I think to your larger point, I would hope and assume that this policy, as with all other policies at our district, we approach with grace and with a goal of working out the best solution. And I think that comes to mind when we've got specific situations. You look at the policy and you see what the policy is, you figure out how to work this out so that it works for the people involved. And I feel that way in terms of the specific curriculum that requires a teacher to see a student's mouth, which I think is rare but does happen. And I think there can be other indoor situations where we revisit how this policy is applied, and we can have faith in our administrators, and we can also revisit things here if we need to. But I agree. I don't think there will be situations where people say, hey, wait a minute, how do we handle this? And I think what we've seen this past year more than other years is the skill and the dedication and the grace of the administrative team to work on those problems in a conscientious way. And that's what I would expect and hope to see on this issue and all the other issues that we end up talking about in this way.
So we've got an amendment on the table, correct?
Yeah.
To what's been presented.
We need to vote on it.
We're voting on the amendment.
The amendment, yeah.
Okay, yeah. What I had said before was I moved to amend the return to learn document to say masks or face coverings will be required when the CDC guidance for Jefferson County states that everyone should wear a mask in public indoor settings.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Nay. Motion carries 4-1 and 4-3.
So if we voted on the amendment, now we need to go back.
Yes. So we need to change the.
So in the buildings today, we do highly recommend it. Are we getting, what's the percentage of the students that are wearing them? Are we wearing them when we need to? Like, kind of where everybody suggests, within 6 feet and all that. Is that being done at all? Or are we just in a free for all?
Pretty small percentage.
We have specific classes where we may have more masks, or some specially designed classrooms. But other than that, not often.
Yeah, that's where I struggle with, because, places where I'm in meetings and stuff, like this, we put them on. You get outside in an open area where, and not outside, I'm saying outside of the office into an area where we can be separated and everything. People do, they take them off, and if somebody feels comfortable, put them on. But it's gotten to be such a, kind of like I'm just not going. It's kind of the mentality. But I don't know how to break that. So I struggle with making somebody wear it. But struggle with people not wearing them when they should. And I think I'm, using this as the leverage that we have to try to do what we can do, but what is it we gotta do to get people to do the right thing without forcing people to do the right thing? You like to have that answer, I know.
Right, yeah, right, I mean, that's the.
And one had that answer the last year and a half.
Well, what I've seen in traveling across the country this summer, because I've gone from California to Virginia in my travels this summer. And when there's leadership at the top that says we need to wear masks and we need to stop this spread, there's no spread. And when there's no leadership saying that, it's rampant like it is here. We don't have leadership, which is why we're having to be the ones that take that leadership on. The lowest level of elected official, I know that. The volunteers. Yes. Yes. And that's who it's been left to in this state. In states that aren't like that, sure, everybody doesn't wear a mask all the time because people don't like them. I don't either. But most people do, and there's not all the arguments, and there's not all the, well, so-and-so says this, and all of that. People wear them, they do what they need to do, and life goes on. Imagine that. All it is this little thing on your face, and life goes on. And kids are in school, they're learning, they're participating, and life seems to be normal. Heck, when my granddaughter goes to school in Maryland, the teachers have to be vaccinated. There was one case in her school, and my daughter got a letter. Now, the other is in Arizona. But I will say that when the granddaughter in high school got a letter, she's gotten about 3 or 4 of them, actually, of kids in her classes have had COVID. So does the parent knows. So, and I feel very strongly we should be doing that at all levels in our schools.
Yeah, I guess I hear you. The thing I feel most important part is communication. And if we know of a case, we need to be notifying those around them, because then it gives that parent the ability to do what they want to do. They do that at daycares. There's been a case here shut down for a week. Talk about an economic impact.
Yeah.
And then they're wearing masks.
I think these 2 points work in conjunction, right? As a parent of a student, I would take that information very differently if I got a letter that said that another student in your son's class tested positive for COVID. That student has been wearing a mask all week. I would take that under advisement as compared to the current situation where I would assume, based on the numbers, that that student probably wasn't. And I am a big believer in students being in the classrooms, and I really feel like that's the strongest case for this is more students in classroom more of the time. And I feel like it is a very strong argument. I think that the proof is there to show that this policy will increase that amount of time that students are in classrooms.
And the thing is too, I mean, so one of the things that we deal with where I work is this question of, well, let's say the employer has a vaccine mandate. Well, if you have a collective bargaining agreement, one of the things that unions can do is say, okay, you got this mandate, now let's bargain over exactly how it's implemented, right? And so, like for example, I hope that the Fairfield Community Education Association takes the opportunity to say, okay, you're going to mandate that we wear masks. Well, let's negotiate with us over that. Like there's nothing wrong with in fact, there's a lot of good in that healthy back and forth between an employer taking a stand that they see as in the best interests of all of their employees and their employees using their collective voice to organize in ways that allows them to make sure that however that thing is implemented, they have a voice in it, right? And so, it can be done in ways that aren't just simply draconian.
So we still have to go back to the other.
We still have the recommendation.
Yeah, but who's got a second on that? We have a,
So we would be voting on the amended return to learn.
Yes.
So is there anything else in the return to learn change that needs to be addressed other than the mask recommendation?
There was another thing, did you call out in your report that was slightly different?
The buses,
Yeah, but
the buses might, we did strike the online learning, since that is not something that would happen.
Right.
So that is striked
Yeah.
within it. That would be on page 150 and 151. That's how it is striked. We do have a link within the document on COVID cases and that our nurses are following for guidance.
Okay, so
we already have language in here that states that this is superseded by changes at the state level, et
Correct.
cetera, right?
so on top of page 147, it's got masks or face coverings and vaccinations. They were strongly recommended at all times. Vaccinations are strongly recommended. I mean, that's currently what we've got, right? So
It seems like with the amendment, everywhere it says masks or face coverings are strongly recommended, we would say that they're required. Would be my understanding. So I understand.
As per the
amendment.
They're only required if
the CDC's current guidance
Right, yeah,
states,
right.
et cetera. Yes.
So, which is what the current amendment.
Yes.
Passed, right?
Yes.
And again, I know I've said this before, but also in the top of page 147, vaccinations are strongly recommended. I would like to see that they're strongly recommended by somebody other than me. Like, by the CDC or whoever, because right now this reads as we strongly recommend. I'm not recommending anything as far as vaccines in anybody. So I would like to see that addition put on there that is recommended by somebody else, by the CDC.
So maybe would like to move to make another amendment to the return to learn plan?
Yes, I would like to make a move to amend the return to learn plan to add recommended by the CDC. Vaccinations are not us as a school board.
I'll second that.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. To amend the statement to say the vaccinations are strongly recommended by the CDC.
So, hold on. We had a motion that you, Frank, made about wearing face masks.
And that amendment passed.
And that amendment passed. So now we've modified this little statement again.
So there's a second amendment.
Second amendment for that statement.
Yes.
So. Okay.
We need to get an,
I'm wearing my pulmonary hat here.
Right.
Government.
So when we vote on the larger recommendation, we need to say as amended by both amendments, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Just gotta make sure we're clear about that.
Right. Yeah.
Because- Let me get everybody confused. I think the last motion on the legal second.
So my question is, do I have to? We then order the.
So you're right, we've contradicted what the board voted on just a little bit ago. We've made a change to this one paragraph that Frank made a change to
Right. So,
change that.
So I amended the first sentence, I think, or my motion amended the first sentence, and Kelly's motion amended the second sentence. And so now we have two amendments that I believe are in harmony.
Now they contradict each other. One of them is saying we're recommending that they are in place. We're not mandating them, we're recommending.
I'm only recommending the
vaccination.
You didn't say anything about the strongly vaccinated?
No, I just said vaccination.
I thought I heard the mask.
No,
All right, well then
I'm just worried about
I'm sorry.
me giving medical advice.
Good to clarify that. Good to clarify that.
And I won't do that either, but. So the doctors take care of that.
But you're absolutely right that we are gonna have to make a motion to approve the return of the plan as a whole as amended.
Well, we already have, yeah.
We do have motions for that, correct?
Right. We just
Debbie
need to be,
and Frank nominated, or made that nomination.
we just need to be clear when we call for the vote that it's amended by full amendment.
Are we ready to vote? Do we have any more discussion?
So I want to make sure, and the matrix then goes back to, do we need the matrix even in the plan?
My understanding is that the matrix would still fill the same role that it has always filled, which is to say that if we get into the yellow, then we request from the state permission.
But we cannot do that.
Right, they will almost certainly say no, right? And we've known this all year, right? That's what the matrix has been in there saying.
Right.
And that's what it was last month and the month before was we request permission and expect to hear back no. And same for the red being virtual.
Yeah, the only way that our school district can go without school would be if you're going to make that up on the other end. So it'd be like a snow day. So if we are going to have a day without school tomorrow for some reason, it would be made up then at the end of the school year.
And you're saying that based on the Department of Ed's guidance, right? And
yes.
Again, we don't have the crystal ball, so we've gone through this last year. I feel like we were in a state where we were hearing from the Department of Ed, this is not going to happen, and then there was a few weeks period where they were approving that based on the situation, and I feel like it's clear for us to say, this is our matrix, it's mostly out of our hands, this is where we'll request it, we'll almost certainly hear back no, and there's really nothing we can do about that.
I mean, there's not a form any longer that we would fill out to do that recommendation.
Right.
So we know that even if we're in that yellow, then we would call a day of no school if that's what we felt we needed to do. So there's not a form that we can even request that at the state at this point.
And the same is true for virtual.
Correct. So that would be, we would need to say, and there have been districts within our area, within our group of superintendents, our group of schools in Great Prairie AEA that have gone to a no school day, 2 days of no school day to clean schools, and then they make those up at the end of the year.
Here's the reason I would recommend keeping it, is that I think that it makes, I would love to be able to say to the community, look, here is this matrix created by people that you directly elected in your community. Here's where we tripped over this line. Here's where, at this moment, we went to the state and we said, here's the thing that we think you should do, and the state is going to say no. So that we can go and say to the people of this community, look, we went to the state of Iowa and we said, you know, this is what our recommendation is in the state of Iowa, and it's profound wisdom, the quotes around that if you would like, has told us no. And so we're big fans of process here, right?
Right.
There's a process, and we can report back to our community the results of that process. And so I think that we spent a lot, the superintendent and the team spent a tremendous amount of time coming up with this thing, because the state told us to do it, and now the state won't let us do it. I think we leave the thing in there just as a artifact of both the work and the fact that the state has handicapped our process, the process that they made us put together in the first place.
And it sounds like there actually is no process now. There is no TPS report to fill out. There is no submission inbox for such a request.
But that doesn't mean we can't go through the motions.
Yeah.
And show them the ridiculousness of the Kabuki theater.
Maybe we keep it in to say this is the matrix we're used to seeing. We'll continue to update it on the website so you can see where things land compared to past months and everything. And try to just be as transparent as possible that there's no option then for acting on it in terms of hybrid or virtual, and then we can maintain that artifact and maintain the information aspect of it. I don't know. It's definitely complicated with the matrix compared to last year.
Is it complicated to keep the matrix up?
I look at it on the backside. Our nurses do the reporting for how many COVID cases every single day. They report that. I look at that data. We know that we have at our elementary less than 5 students at Washington. We have 6 at Pence. And I will say these are current people within that building, not just necessarily students, but everyone. At the middle school was 11, and then at the high school was 29. So that's, we then combined all of that and put it on the website for how many is the full district. We do separate our staff out that we know. It's not hard to do. It's just we do it every day. We look at the coronavirus, Iowa, coronavirus.org. We pull that data for how many in all of our counties around, and we put that on the website. We put how many positive cases are on our site, and then those are weighted together, and I will share my screen again for this part. So we look at all the different parts that are there. We look, and I will say this dip was because of the change in how the data was put on there. So this is reflecting of how many positive cases in Jefferson County on a 7-day average. And then these are the different counties that feed into our school district. And it gives you the percents of each county, and it gives you the change. Then on the website, it shows where things are in relationship to what we've been reporting all last year and this year, is that limited spread based on 70% of a weighted score of our in-person people of our school district, 30% weighted score of our county. That is put on here, and then that is then comes up with where the number lies on this matrix. So right now you can again see that dip of the different reporting, and this is showing you the 7-day average that along with our school reporting. It's not hard to keep up. It's just there every day.
I like looking at this and seeing it along with the rest of the COVID dashboard.
I think the return to learn plan as it is mostly clear about this, although there's still sections that say, how will decisions be determined if the school is online, hybrid learning, or face-to-face? And, I think that's pretty clear. It doesn't actually, that section doesn't reference the the matrix anymore, so I think that's accurate, right? And the matrix kind of remains as a informational artifact. But I think the rest of it is, someone reading this would get an accurate impression of the matrix, which is it's informational and not really a decision-making piece at this point.
So do we need to strike out where it's referenced? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it's already, that's already been accommodated,
Yeah.
I believe. So I don't think that we need any language changes there.
So, are we ready to vote on the amended motion?
I would ask one question that, before, while we're still in discussion of when this would take place, I would like to make sure that we have time to inform all of our students, our teachers, our faculty, and take time for that. If we would do that, I would like to have that would start on next Monday.
Work with the administrators.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
That's a lot better than tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't need to do that again.
Maybe because for us, I mean, we would be informing opposing teams or whatever, whatever activity we're talking about at the high school, I guess, understanding, I'm understanding correctly what you're discussing.
Well, that's a clarification. I don't know if we got to.
Well, I guess that's, I mean, I know it's not measured talk, but I guess clarification of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's middle school at all levels, right? It's
pretty significant.
It is. It's a big deal. I mean, what is the expectation?
And maybe just till Monday is not enough time to do all
the activities and stuff.
Again, if we wait, the longer we wait, the more the spread is. So what's the point of having a mandate if we don't enforce it?
You're not gonna tell me all those people coming to those events don't have face masks. If they travel, if they fly, if they work, there's all kinds of places they are required. I volunteer at the food pantry in this town. We require free face masks. They walk in without it. Every single one of them walks back in with a mask on their face. They all have it. It's become just like what Tim said. They don't want it. It's uncomfortable. It's cumbersome. And it is. I agree.
I would still like to wait till Monday though.
I agree with Monday. I don't agree with past. I would agree with you, but I'm willing to go. I understand the need to notify people and all of that.
So are we saying that what's being implied here, that any events in the buildings, masks are required unless participants are not able to wear them?
Like at volleyball.
Volleyball and other
The play.
All of the band events, you name it, right?
The band last year had things that they put over their instruments and stuff. Do they still use that this year?
They still have those. But I do think, as Frank was saying earlier, to give everyone grace on different activities or if they are doing a certain lesson, that would be an opportunity of a change. We had all last year our students in our like volleyball, I can remember, or basketball. When they played, we did not have outbreaks of our kids within those and no masks. So they were able to handle that. They did a nice job of keeping as a team and follow the mitigations within that. That's also following what the guidance has with our athletic association.
I'm okay with Monday.
So we go with Monday, that gives the administration time to then get together too and look at some of those other guidance.
Margot, do you have any thoughts?
Nothing, I just said yes.
All right, so do I need to incorporate that into the motion?
That would help.
I think it needs to be stated, but I would not put it in the agenda.
No, I wouldn't put it in the plan.
That's never.
What is Monday's date?
Right?
Yeah.
I just want to, I can't emphasize it enough. The administrator, a teacher, or a staff member, or a child is ill. It should not be well, we'll send them to school, they'll be okay. They need to stay home.
Yeah.
Because that's really the way you resolve this whole deal. It's not everything else you can think of. I mean, the math does help. I'm not going to argue that. But it's those other personal things you need to do yourself. I've seen it in large crowds. 65,000 of my best friends. And we were counting the mask in a second.
You're talking about being at that IO.
No, I just don't say that, yeah. If people have to do their part. That's where I feel we're going wrong. That's where really the problem is. People aren't doing their own part to take care of themselves. Once again, it's not me, it's for everybody else. Do it about your neighbor or your friend.
Okay. Any more discussion? So we have a motion on the table to approve the return to learn plan. We need to approve the amended return to learn plan as stated. That we will.
By both amendments.
By both amendments.
Yeah.
And what's the exact wording saying?
The first, well, you got it recorded, right?
I kind of do. Frank, I have it as a star to get it exactly from you to make sure I have it right in the notes. Masks or face coverings will be required for when Jefferson County,
When the CDC guidance for Jefferson County states that everyone should wear a mask in public indoor settings. And I did not write down Kelly's.
I just added, as recommended by the CDC.
or vaccinations.
Right, vaccinations only.
Yeah.
And this is an all or nothing thing, and you have to, if you're against one part or the other, you still have to, one way, all or nothing.
We're voting on the amended.
Okay, right, making sure.
So you could signal your rejection of the amendment again by voting no.
Okay, so all in favor to approve the amended return to learn plan stating that masks are required with the CDC guidance. Says that Jefferson County, I think I wrote it down now.
Jefferson, when the CDC guidance recommends that Jefferson County states when everyone should wear a mask.
in public indoor settings.
Mask or face coverings will be required when the CDC guidance for Jefferson County states that everyone should wear a mask in public indoor settings.
And also the amendment to vaccinations are strongly recommended by the CDC. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So that's a 4 to 3 vote. Right, so that passes. That means on September 27th, we will require all masks, starting September 27th, we will require masks in all the buildings. All right, so next, can I get a motion to approve 2 long-term substitute teachers as floating substitute? 2 long-term substitute teachers as floating substitute teachers for all buildings.
So moved.
Seconded.
And
Who seconded that?
Kelly did.
I did.
All right, any discussion?
To be clear, this doesn't have anything to do with the flurries of emails that we received this afternoon. That is just-
No.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay,
ask that.
okay,
No.
okay, thank you.
This is just to help when, so that we know that there's buildings that do not have enough subs in them. And so this is someone that we can have then at all times in the building.
And what? I'll work it out.
So they just come to work each day?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And you pretty much will have a guaranteed room that they all need to be in.
Yep.
I know that we've done the same thing, and we have 3, and they are used, all 3 of them are used every day.
How does this rate of pay, where does this rate of pay sort of sit? Like, I guess I just don't have a frame of reference. For this.
For a substitute teacher,
Yeah,
it's on our pay scale that you approved at a board meeting, that we have, it's $125 a day for someone. This would be on the long-term setting though, that is, beginning wages of a teacher.
okay.
So that is, what that pay is for each one.
Thank you.
All in favor, say yay.
Aye.
That motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve the request for allowable growth for special education deficit in the amount of $385,800.91?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? This is our standard that we vote on every year, right?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to accept the bid for 1 Suburban Confessor Auto Mall as presented?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
When do we expect to get this? Sometime next year?
I don't have that date. I know that things have been slow on getting COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lead time to do this.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that it's worse than that, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Okay. I didn't know if they'd give us any kind of hope for target.
This is just,
This has been in our regular.
Yeah.
rotation.
Yeah, this is a normal rotation.
Already budgeted, right?
Correct.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve the board policies at the first reading, 104 anti-bullying harassment policy? 903.5R1, distribution of materials, regulations, 904.2, advertising and promotion, 904.4, money raising activities in the schools.
Seconded,
Who was first?
Kelly.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And can I get a motion to approve the board policy with the second reading, 403.3E1, hepatitis B vaccine, information and record?
So moved. Second.
Alderman Jones.
We'll give it to Debbie this time.
All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. On to highlights of the evening. Kelly, why don't you start?
Love you, Nina. I'm not gonna pick the obvious student thing. I'm gonna pick the acceptance of the FFA field trip. That's always a good thing. Our kids love it. It's a good thing for our community. I feel there's a strong FFA movement going afoot, so anything we can embrace that does that is a good thing.
Very good. John?
I think we did the right thing tonight, and I know that there's gonna be a lot of people who are pissed off at us, in like now. But I think we did the right thing.
Tim?
You know, I dreaded this meeting. I talked to you Saturday, I talked to you today, and I've been hearing difficulties across the state with this whole discussion. I support masks when we need to wear them. I'm glad us as a board handled this in a professional manner. I am pretty happy with how our audience did. There was a board meeting on Friday, I got info on where it was not anywhere near, not even close. It was like opposite ends of the spectrum from what happened. And which I don't like that kind of thing, because like I said this tonight, the political aspect of this has driven us to be where we're at today. If it was not so political, or wasn't political, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Right? I support masks every day. I walk into my office, I've got an individual, she's got cancer on her spine, she's gonna have surgery later this week. I gotta do what's right. And that's where, I've been struggling with this tonight, and there's no good answer. There's all the sayings about does all this through breathing and all that. I don't believe in that. Okay, but I just want people to do the right thing, and I go so many places and they're not. I'm hypocritical about it because yes, I did go set in 2 football games with 65,000 of my best friends, right? Right next door, and I took precautions, whatever I could, to not be contaminated. And then I got scolded because I couldn't go see my granddaughter for a couple of weeks because of it. So I had to pay a price, right? So I appreciate how the board acted about it. I appreciate how the community somewhat addressed this. The emails we got, if you could throw the emails in the discussion, it was exactly what you said. It's 50-50, right? It was 50-50. And I just want to thank you as a board for all you do. Now the hard part is for you guys have to remember that. But as we walk out of this door, I'll be the first one to say, yes, we did, and yes, we are, and this is what we got to do.
Yeah, that's the important thing too, is whatever, it was still a board decision.
That's
And I will back the decision the whole way.
That's
So
exactly.
just making sure that that's known. Like I said, I'm not opposed to masks, I'm just opposed to the situation at this point. That's it.
I feel exactly the same way. I was also nervous about coming in. I misread the paragraph to begin with because I was so nervous. But I was really appreciative even when the audience did start to kind of hype up, but they stayed quiet. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate the way we work together. And we've always worked well together, so I think that that's really important to acknowledge. And I appreciate you all.
I hope that continues because I didn't realize one of you weren't going. I realized one of you weren't, but I didn't realize there was another one. So I appreciate that ability for us to look. I'm sorry, I'm not.
No, it's
Just,
okay.
I appreciate that very much because I've been on boards where it was not like that. You had 7 people and 7 different opinions. It's a good thought.
Yeah, I'm the one, I get to run through the fire once, all by myself, so.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Frank?
Change the name.
Yeah, I think for me, the highlight was listening. I think, like you were saying, I think we were listening to each other, and I was giving my full attention to all our audience participants. I got that impression from everyone else, which I think is really important. 5 minutes seems like a long time when you have people stretched up, but people took time out of their evening for that 5 minutes, and I feel like it's very important to listen actively, and I think we did. And I feel the same way about listening to our student representative. We get these detailed reports from our administrators that we listen to in the reading of them, and then the follow-up questions. So that's the highlight for me.
Margot?
Yeah, I think my highlight of the evening was listening to David Sands stand up as one sort of silent voice. Well, he wasn't so silent, but in that group, that he would stand up and say, I think masks are a good thing, and why. And so for me, that was kind of cool.
Well, I would be with everybody else saying that we really did have a good discussion. I really appreciate working on this board because I've learned a lot about schools as well as technology. But a highlight for me was actually reading in the report about the Medela unit.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say.
And that I think it was Jillian Dunlap that did her internship at Creative Ed, and now it's installed there, and I can't wait to go see it. So that was just really cool on just a huge number of levels. And I was looking at that. Big highlight.
All right. We get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:55.